Councillor Douglas Lumsden is subbing for Councillor Wheeler, and Mr. Rafter is subbing for Mrs. Blackie, and also we just had Councillor Radley is sub for Councillor Many, and I welcome all of you. And also we have an observer from the Best Value Auditor, so I would like to welcome all of you. I will now ask Mrs. Dunsmuir to go over some housekeeping detail and take a roll call to ensure everyone is present on the call.
Okay, thank you, convener. If I could please ask members to just confirm to me that you're present when I call your name. Convener?
Present.
Councillor Alphonse?
Present.
Councillor Bell?
Present.
Councillor Cameron?
Present.
Councillor Leslie Dunbar?
Good morning.
Councillor Gregg?
Here.
Councillor Hutchison?
Present.
Councillor Imrie?
Present.
Councillor Lumsden?
Present.
Councillor MacDonald?
Present.
Councillor McGregor?
Present.
Councillor Radley?
Present.
Deputy Provost?
Present.
Reverend Dix?
Present.
Mr. Murray?
Yeah.
Mr. Paul?
Yeah, here.
Mr. Rafferty?
Present.
Mr. Sansom?
Yeah.
And Miss Scott?
Present.
Thank you. And if just a quick reminder to all more remote participants, rather, if you could please keep your camera and your microphone switched off during the meeting, unless you're speaking, in which case please do switch your microphone and camera on. If remote participants wish to speak, please use either the raise hand function or type into the chat and we'll alert the convener. If you're having difficulty doing either of those, please just turn on your camera and signal in that way. Thank you, convener.
Thank you so much indeed, Steph. Moving on to agenda item 1.1, there are no item of urgent business. 2.2, there are no item of exempt business. 3.3, declaration of interest. Do members have any declaration of interest? No. Don't see any hands.
Any hands, convener, no.
Okay. Excellent, thanks very much. 4.1, there are no requests for deputation at the moment, and 5.1, minute of the previous meetings. For approval, Article 3, it was agreed that the clerk would recirculate the service update, which had included in the request information on the children who had been excluded on more than one occasion, and to Councillor Many, this has been done. And Article 7, it was agreed that service update be circulated to advise whether the 23 remaining capital projects were still on budget and on schedule for the completion by August 2021, and this has been done. Anything else, member? Or can we approve the minutes of the previous meeting?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you so much. 6.1, notice of motion, nothing at the moment. And moving on to 7.1, committee business planner. Members, any questions? Councillor Cameron.
Thank you, convener. It's in relation to page 13, number 27, which is for 2022. It's about the school estate report. This committee resolved that this should come to the meeting in March 2021, with only 4 administration councillors requesting referral to full council. The will of this committee being that the decision should not be referred to full council. Can the convener explain why this was referred to full council, and as a consequence, the Bucksburn Academy extension has been kicked into the long grass? Of the 3 budgets presented in the 21st of March, only the political administration budget did not include the Bucksburn Academy extension.
Thank you so much, Councillor Cameron, for raising this one. This was not referred from the Education Committee to the full council. The report just came as a part of the council business, and that it was discussed there. And I can I can actually bring in the officer. They can go through and they can explain it to you. However, after the officer, I can come back again and I can explain to you. Can I bring in Mr. Booth and also Mr. Jones, please?
Convener, good morning. I'm happy to give an update on where we are. So at the last committee, there was a procedural motion without officers' input in terms of asking to bring that report back. We reviewed that with the team, and for the various reasons as highlighted in the report referred to council, we were unable to meet that timeline in terms of information missing, and took a report forward really to explain why. That report's in the public domain, but I'd be happy to explain the detail of that to any members of the committee, even have a session with them to go through that report in a bit more detail to explain the background. We have done that already with some of the other committee members, but that's really where we are in terms of the work that's required to take the estate plan forward and a time scale against it. So happy to take any questions or indeed arrange briefings with any members of the committee to explain where we are with that.
Excellent. Thanks very much, Mr. Booth. Councillor Cameron, would you like to ask a question, or I can give a opportunity?
No, I would like to come back on that. I fully appreciate what Mr. Booth's saying, and I understand that. My real concern is that here we have a committee of council which has 7 external members. This committee is specifically about education delivery, and the committee agreed that we should move this forward. I fully accept what Mr. Booth has said, but I feel that the external members of the committee are potentially not getting the recognition they probably should, because if at the last committee, it was the administration that didn't want to do this, and they didn't say they wanted to refer it to full council because it couldn't be happen. It couldn't happen. They said they wanted.
Councillor Cameron, sorry, can I please? This is not true that we actually not giving opportunity to external members. They are part of this committee, and they do get opportunity for everything, and they have right to vote as well. Now, in the last committee, which you moved the procedure motion, they did not actually get opportunity to listen to from our officer at all, because no, our officers, Mr. Stephen Booth and Mr. Jones, had a meeting with them, as you had from Mr. Booth, and they got full actually detail of where we are in the school state business plan. It is impossible to bring just no, and that's why it is moved to December 2022. If they have any question, Councillor Cameron, they can ask question just now from our officer, and I'm going to give first opportunity to Mr. Rick, and I can. Mr. Rick, would you like to ask any question to Mr. Jones or Mr. Booth?
Yeah, we had the opportunity on Monday at the pre-brief to talk about this briefly. One point I'd like to make is that under your current schedule, you have the decision on Bucksburn to be made, final decision on Bucksburn to be made before the estate plan is discussed again at the Education Committee. And that seems totally illogical, because surely you need to have the overall plan. And if you look at the paper that the officers put out, if you look at the paper the officers put out, it alludes to the fact that the roll call will be adjusted most likely before November. So, you know, you will have a lot of more information by then. And surely it would be a good idea to have this back on the EODC agenda, the school estate plan in some format. One of the excuses was the fact there's got to be a lot of consultations, but you must have a plan before you go into the consultations. So can't you share that kind of whatever plan it is at in November with the committee?
Mr. Jones, are you yourself, Mr. Booth?
Yeah, I'm happy to answer that. We did have I think, quite a positive conversation where that issue was raised during the week, and the team, you raised a number of points. The team needs to go away and have a think about how we can bring that back as best we can. Obviously, the review of all school capacity is a work that's ongoing all the time in terms of capacity, not just at Bucksburn, but across the school estate. And around the end of the year, we would normally be bringing back any options of any substantial works required in any school building to meet capacity as anticipated for the following year. So I can give an assurance that work around capacity in individual schools is ongoing all the time. Will continue to be updated over the summer into the next academic year with short-term options brought forward later in the year as the team normally would. Bucksburn, we know there's a long-term capacity issue, and the team are working as part of that estate plan and pulling together the information just in terms of build rates, sales rates of housing, and other criteria that dictate the capacity at the moment. So I think we acknowledge Bucksburn will need to come forward later in the year in terms of how we deal with capacity, as well a number of other sites.
Thank you so much, Mr. Rick. Are you happy now?
Yeah, can I just have one follow-up? At our parents' meeting earlier this week, a few parents raised the question about what is the status of the Countess Wells Academy, and can we include that in any update that we're given?
The work in the business plan around the community campus model is predominantly focused around what a campus model might look like at Countess Wells. We're due to report that in November. Before that, there will be some wider consultation on that community campus model and getting a shared understanding of what a community campus actually means and looks like in terms of learning all the way through, but in terms of other uses that fit in with that. So that will be reported back around November, as I understand it, and there'll be some consultation that will lead to that report.
Thank you so much, Mr. Booth. Any more questions from external rep before I can bring in Councillor Cameron? Thanks very much. Councillor Cameron, please.
Thank you, convener. I'm feeling a little bit better the fact that Mr. Booth has assured us that we will be getting information back in relation to Bucksburn later in the year. Bucksburn isn't a long-term capacity issue. Bucksburn is a capacity issue as of August 2021, and will get worse as we move forward to 2022. The children in the catchment area deserve to have the capacity in the school that's necessary, and so I'm happy about that. Countess Wells currently is a project. It's not necessarily a reality. If you look at the plan for Countess Wells, there were 2 primary schools as well as a secondary school, and there's no sign at the moment of the primary school coming to fruition, even although we need one, and we're using the old Hazelwood School as an interim measure. So, I think it is important that we don't delay things far too long. We do not want to go back to the bad old days of our schools in Aberdeen having the playground areas filled up with porta cabins in order to get the capacity for the children to attend school and get their education properly. But I'm happy now that Mr. Booth has made that assertion. Thank you, convener.
Thanks very much, Councillor Cameron. If I can bring in Tony.
Thank you. I just wanted to raise the point about, as is explained, maybe I've got misunderstood it, but my understanding is that none of the schools currently run at 100% capacity, so not every facility inside the school has ever been used at any one time. So it could be sort of used better, and there might be ways where the classes could be filled up differently. And if this being the case, then I think that as the Education Committee, going to have to give some thought to some of the terms that are used when it comes to looking at appeals for pupils who can't get a place at a certain school, because some of the main things in there are that it actually requires building. But if you say you're going to be able to increase the capacity of a school without doing anything to buildings, just better utilising the classes, then that whole piece of paperwork really needs to be given a good look at as part of the overall thing.
Thanks very much, Tony. Ms. Shepherd.
Thank you, convener. Yes, I'm more than happy to pick up that point out with the meeting and make sure we're not vulnerable. Thanks, Mr. Rafferty.
Excellent. Thanks very much. If no more questions, then can we move on to there are no referral from any other committee, and we can move on to 9.1. 9.1 performance management framework report education operations. Can I bring in Mr. Patterson?
Thank you, convener. Sorry, I was having a bit of technical issue there. Just as a brief introduction, I mean, I think the important thing to note at this point in time is particularly around the focus around school reopening. The Education Performance Week tends to be continued to be supplemented with a range of pupil absence and attendance measures, largely to demonstrate how the service is continuing to support pupil attendance and mitigate against COVID transmission risks and impact within schools. At the same time, and I think this is probably important to know as well, in terms of business as usual, the majority of service standards, including the corporate indicator targets, are demonstrably being met, largely in spite of the current circumstances. And it's important to note that this demonstrates underlying improvement is being sustained. I mean, I think by way of example, I think the relatively low level of year-to-date complaints and the substantial improvement in complaint response times that the service has delivered over Q3 in particular, I think is quite important to note, because obviously it's been a particularly challenging time for parents, guardians and pupils. And I think with the newly constituted employee attendance and absence figures, we're beginning to get a better idea of how the education service is managing staff absence as well.
Sorry, Mr. Patterson. Some of the councillors, they have difficulties to hear you. Is it a sound issue or something? You can maybe change the position, or is a
hang on a sec. I'll have a quick try. Maybe the microphone is that any better? Can it be now?
Yeah, that's much better now. Then yeah, leave microphone, please.
I think, as I was saying, I think the performance report for Q3 is generally positive. I think there is still a focus, obviously, on the extent to which the service is supporting people attendance. And I think between the information that's in the report and obviously the regular service updates, I think the service is well placed to evidence that it is meeting the needs of learners and through the various models that are being delivered at this point in time. And I think the fact that they're maintaining performance against what you would class as the corporate indicator target suggested that the service hasn't taken its eye off the bigger picture as well.
Mr. Patterson, we have still, I think we cannot hear you now. There must be connection problem. Cannot hear you at all.
Hello?
Yeah, we have some connection problem. Cannot hear you.
Convener, sometimes
Yeah.
if you switch the camera off, you can use the available bandwidth to get a better sound. I don't know if that would help at all.
Great idea, Gregor. Yeah, yes, I think yes, it's a good idea. Mr. Patterson, can you please switch off your camera and then you can start again, because there is still problem.
Okay, is that an improvement at all, convener?
Yeah. You have to start again. Sorry.
Okay. I think it must have been a bandwidth problem.
It's much better. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. I was just saying, in terms of the content of the reports, obviously there's still a focus on pupil attendance and absence at the moment. Obviously, it's a very fluid situation with the schools and phases reopening. But I think it's important that we consistently reflect the attendance and absence measures, just to give members assurance that the service is managing that. And I think at the same time, when we're speaking about the corporate indicator targets and the service standards, I think it's clear from the report that the service is meeting most of those obligations.
Thanks very much, Mr. Patterson. Members, any questions or comments?
Councillor Cameron. Yeah.
Thank you, convener. It's really for clarification on page 26 of the report in Appendix A. We see some low figures for pupil attendance due to self-isolation. Just for the avoidance of doubt, this is, I'm thinking from January forward, and obviously at that point the only pupils that were in school were pupils of key workers. So are these figures for pupils who were attending school as opposed to the total pupil population?
Thanks very much, Councillor Cameron, and thank you so much for your generosity. I'm Vice Convener. And Ms. Shepherd?
Thank you, convener. And thanks for the question, Councillor Cameron. Correct. That the numbers that are being reported here relate to children who were physically in the building but were asked to self-isolate as a result of COVID-19.
No, thank you. That's fine. That's good. It was just so that we were clear what we were looking at. Thank you.
Excellent. Any more questions? No, I don't see any more hand. Members' report is for noting. Can we note the report then?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And moving on to 10.1, additional closures day for secondary school. And if I can bring in Mr. Duncan.
Thank you, convener. Good morning.
Good morning.
On the 16th of February, the First Minister announced that an additional 2 days will be set aside for teachers to engage with the assessment, moderation and quality assurance process required for awarding national qualifications as part of the alternative certification model in place for session 2020-2021. The alternative certification model replaces national 5, higher and advanced higher exams this session and has a 5-stage process. The timeline detailed in para 3.7 outlines how the process has been applied across all 11 secondary schools within Aberdeen City. The process will provide an opportunity for moderation at class, faculty and school level, in addition to moderation between city schools and as a local authority. Adherence to this tight process will ensure that schools provide the SQA with robust, quality assured provisional results that will stand up to external scrutiny. The allocation of the 2 additional inset days will provide school staff with the necessary time to carry out the process. It is proposed that the 28th of May be used to allow teachers to work collaboratively to moderate pupil work and to support consistent decision-making of the provisional results allocated to pupils. It is further proposed that the second day, the 4th of June, will be used to afford staff time to input the data into the SQA Connect system, which requires to be checked at each stage by principal teachers and senior leadership teams to avoid data entry error. Thank you, and I'm happy to take any questions on what I've just said or the report.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Mr. Duncan. Members, Councillor Cameron.
Thank you, convener. It's not so much a question as a comment. I'd like to thank Mr. Duncan for this report. It's very clear. It shows exactly where we want to go in Aberdeen City Council with the certification process this year. We all know there were problems last year, and it's nice to see that certainly the planning seems to be ahead of the curve. And obviously, thanks to all the staff who are going to be involved in this, but in particular to the report being so clear and concise. Thank you, Mr. Duncan.
Thank you, Councillor Cameron.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cameron. Any more question? No, I do not see any hands. Can we agree the recommendations?
Agreed.
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 Excellent. Thank you so much, members. And can I thank to all of our external members and our officer for contribution. And you have a wonderful day as end of the business. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
you.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you.